Okay, so it's time for our final speech there. So, and I have here a description of Rhys, and I'm gonna read it, basically. Rhys has over a decade experience working in human-centered design, building and growing design teams, and pushing the design discipline up the ranks. He's currently studying the UK first Design MBA at Central St. Martin's, and today he's talking about how to connect design and business and business. Please welcome Rhys.
Thank you. Thank you. So firstly, just to say I'm really privileged to be here today. I got up at 4 o'clock this morning in Edinburgh in Scotland, flew over, and I've arrived to what seemed like a super engaged crowd in an amazing space. It's absolutely incredible to see all of you design evangelists here. It's something else. It's absolutely incredible. So thank you for having me. Firstly, about myself, I've had a sort of brief intro already, but I've been in design for about 14 years, okay, roughly. Started out in design research. I mainly focus on user experience and service design. And in recent years, I've been moving into the space of design strategy and how to grow design teams. And I've done that for a number of different organizations. So the advantage of my perspective is it's not just from one company. I've worked in full service digital agencies. I've worked in consultancies. I've worked as a freelancer. And I've also worked within large organizations as well, okay? Does it sound okay? I can hear it dipping and going. Is it working all right? Yeah? Great. Good stuff. I won't bore you with my MBA. It's been a massive part of my life for the last year. I've still got 6 months to go. I've got my project, my dissertation to do. But a master in business administration is pretty hard. I'm not going to lie. It's my second master's, believe it or not. But that one in particular, I should check it out. It's a Design MBA. It's done by Central St. Martin's. Not that I'm advertising for them. I know I'm not allowed to. But it's in the UK, it's a very unique course. It's the first of its kind, okay? It's mixing design school and creativity with business school. And it's a really interesting mix. And that's kind of going to be the topic we're looking at today, okay? So what I'm going to cover off is design and business. Two sides of the same coin, okay? We'll start off the first half of the session looking at how we can grow design teams within an organization. And the second half of the session will be focused on how we can use design as a discipline to grow a business, okay? So not necessarily grow it financially, but to hopefully make it work better and then hopefully make it more financially viable as well. So I do speak quite fast and I am from Scotland. So particularly the guys at the front, if I'm speaking too fast or too Scottish, just, I don't know, have you got your Jimmy hat from earlier? You can give me a sign of some sort. Good stuff. So the first thing we're going to do, we're going to look at how to grow design within a company, okay? This is probably, in the UK anyway, this has been a really hot topic for the last, I'd say, maybe 5-6 years, design maturity-wise. It's been an interesting sort of 5 to 6 years in the UK where I've seen the industry change from having maybe 1 or 2 designers in a company to having like a whole design team with specialisms like research, UI, UX, service design, okay? So it's an interesting sort of time. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to outline a number of conditions or factors that I believe we can use as designers to help design as a discipline grow within the businesses we're in. To help me tell this story, we're going to think about Jan, okay? Now, I've tried to use names that might be relevant to Poland, but this is my first time in Poland. I've never been here before, okay? So it might not be culturally correct, so please forgive me if that's the case. If we think about Jan, he's actually one of 2 designers working in a small media company, okay? Jan's been working there for about 18 months, and he's a good designer, but what he really struggles with is getting a bit of a voice, okay? He doesn't have much authority. He's only been there 18 months. Design's a new discipline in that company. So he struggles to get his voice heard. The second main issue that he has is that he's so busy doing stuff, mainly production level design, so downstream design work, that he doesn't really have space to be able to talk about design in its more valuable contexts, okay? So while I have a drink of water, can you guys show me hands if you identify with Jan or... Good, good. So hopefully this will be useful then. Otherwise, I better start from scratch. So what I'm going to say next is I'm going to cover off the first factor that I feel is important. Okay, we'll come back to Jan. We will come back to Jan, I promise. But what I want to do is tell you a little story. Has anybody seen this before? You see them spray painted on some walls in European cities. So I'm not sure if crime is a problem in Krakow, but this is from Barcelona, okay? I moved to Barcelona in 1991. Yeah, that's how old I am. And I lived in the Gothic Quarter, which is very picturesque and very beautiful, but it's quite renowned for petty crime, okay? And in 1991, which is pre-Olympics in Barcelona, I can guarantee you it was pretty sketchy. Okay, it wasn't the best place to live. I've got good memories from there, but it wasn't the safest. So, not every day, but maybe every week or so, I would see the same thing. I would see a group of people approaching a crossroads, like the one in the picture, and the green man, would go red. You know when you're crossing the road and the green man goes red, so you stop. And as all these people stopped at the side of the road, just as the cars were about to pull off, a man or two would appear from nowhere, grab somebody's bag, and cross the road. So what that meant was that the cars had started to move by then. Nobody could chase the men. Not even the bravest of German tourists could run over and get the bag back, okay? I saw them try. It was a very, very good method. Now, I'm being a little bit cheeky here, okay? I'm using this story, which is a little bit sort of bad and a bit dark, to introduce our first factor, so bear with me, okay? We're going to talk about opportunity. So, think about it. You've got the vulnerable tourists. You've got the criminals who know the streets and know the setup. And what else is important? The timing, okay? So what they've done, what these criminals have done, is they have smelt an opportunity. They've seen an opportunity and they've devised a strategy to allow them to take advantage of that opportunity, okay? So if this sounds a bit crazy, you're saying, why is Rhys telling me stories about Barcelona? It's kind of a good story, but we're here to talk about design. So we'll get onto that in a second. Okay, I'll give you a design example. But let's just recap on the important things that I just said there about opportunity. So one is identify the opportunity. Two is orchestrate a plan to exploit or take advantage of this opportunity. Okay? So we'll come back to this, but I'll give you more of a design-related story. I'll give you an example of a company I worked for a few years ago. Disclaimer, I have never worked for Netflix. I'd been working at a company called Scottish Television, okay? Yeah, I know. Yeah. The thing is, when you're from Scotland working for Scottish Television, it's a big thing, especially if you're from Glasgow. I'm from Edinburgh, so. But it's true, their flagship product was the STV player, okay? Now, I don't know if you've got similar services in Poland, I'm sure you do, okay? But basically, this player allowed you to stream or broadcast news, sports, drama, sometimes movies on the web. Now, you could also get something called like catch up. So if you'd missed it live, you could catch up on older stuff, all right? You might be thinking, yeah, that's super old. Yeah, I know. Okay, and it's also what Netflix do. Yeah, fine, cool. But this was 2012. Okay, so if you think back to 2012, Netflix had just launched in the UK. It was brand new in 2012. Okay, nothing like Netflix had existed before. Really, you had the BBC iPlayer, which is a great example, but that was about it. So what we were doing really was the cheap, actually free for customers, national Scottish version of Netflix. More like that. So the issue we had with this service is that they had invested heavily in technology and platforms, but it was pretty impressive actually. In 2012, they had it on Android, iOS, web, Windows, and they also had it on smart TVs. Okay, so in terms of platform growth, it was incredible. It was ahead of its time, really, particularly in the UK at that time. But the problem we had was consistency. Okay, it looked absolutely terrible. It looked different on every single platform. It was just plain ugly. All right. So I was trying to lead a small design team for STV at the time, but there were only 3 of us, so it was small. And they had big ambitions for what they wanted to do with the STV player. So one of the directors of STV, which is Scottish Television, got me and the product owner for STV player together in a meeting. So he called a meeting, and I sensed something. I said, I wonder what this is going to be about. The meeting was about the future of the STV player. How could we evolve this service moving forward? And I thought to myself, good question. What do I want to get out of this? Okay, what can I do here that's going to benefit Scottish Television, but it's also going to help me do what I want to do, which is grow design within this company? So in the meeting, I put a case forward for designing a research lab in the center of Scottish Television. So the idea behind this was that we would be able to test stuff out with customers before we launch it, maybe even before we build it. Because up until then, they weren't doing that, okay? It was build it, launch it, and it was driven by advertising, so they knew that the videos were being seen, but that's about the only metric they had. So it was about understanding how customers use the service, and it was about getting in customers' heads to understand what they were expecting next. And it's just good practice, I suppose. The other thing was about stakeholder involvement, okay? I wanted design to be in the eyes of senior stakeholders. I wanted senior stakeholders like the CEO to see his customers' pain. I wanted them to actually feel it. And I thought, if we can get them observing some sessions live in the middle of the company, this is going to work. So I was a bit cheeky, you know, again, I was like, yeah, okay, come on, let's do this. Give me the money. I'm going to build a design lab here, you know, let's do some research. And they said yes. Okay, they said, yeah, do it. So 3 months later, we'd built a research lab in Scottish Television, and we used that lab to help us define the STV player service of the future, as well as new services for Scottish Television, okay? Now, the learning from this is about opportunity, which brings us back to the first step, okay? I identified the opportunity, and then what I did is I orchestrated a plan to exploit or take advantage of that opportunity. Now, it sounds a little bit dark, doesn't it? Like you're taking advantage, but you're not. It's common sense, okay? If you want to grow design in an organization, you have to be able to identify an opportunity when it comes along, and you have to be able to build on that opportunity when it comes along. Super important, all right? So let's see. What else have we got? Does anybody know what the Doherty threshold is? Wojtek, do you know what Doherty threshold is in Polish? Good, no, it's fine. It's a joke, it's a trick question, really, okay? Basically, the Doherty threshold is that productivity soars when a computer and its users interact at a pace of less than 400 milliseconds. That ensures neither has to wait on the other. I've taken that from a website, Laws of UX, by John Jablonski. I don't know it off by heart. That's fine. It's an example, okay? What I'm trying to say here is that if you do something and you describe it like this, provide system feedback within 400 milliseconds in order to keep users' attention and increase productivity, and you have a quoted source, what you're doing is you're gaining credibility, okay? It makes it sound more robust or more scientific. So what I'm trying to say for the second factor is rigor, okay? So the first one was opportunity. The second one is rigor, okay? So you've got to be rigorous about the way you work. If you're rigorous in your approach, the people we work with will take you more seriously, okay? It will enable us to have more relevant, meaningful conversations. It will give us credibility, which in turn gives us what we want. So I want to think of examples where rigor is useful. If you think about how a scientist or a professor writes, they will reference things, won't they? So when you read their writing, it comes across with a certain level of gravitas. Nobody questions that or messes with that. They believe in it because they trust it, okay? Another example is when you see, if you watch the good old American dramas where they're in the courtroom arguing a case, the lawyers can be quite aggressive. I'm not saying be aggressive, don't be aggressive. That's a bad move in design, okay? But what you can learn from those guys is how well they evidence their arguments, okay? So that's what I'm saying our second factor is to help us to grow design within businesses, okay? Argue your case like a lawyer. Fat Jew. Yeah, I'm not, that's highly inappropriate, okay? I will explain. This guy is called Josh Ostrovsky, okay? He's also called the Fat Jewish, okay? That's his name. Does anybody recognize him? He's quite a big thing. He's quite famous. This guy refers to his hair as his Jew unicorn or his hair erection, okay? He's got 11.1 million followers on Instagram and 1 million followers on Facebook. So what can we learn from such a man? Well, he's not just on Instagram. He does do some interesting work. That's why he's popular, okay? But my point here is influence, okay? So the third factor for growing design within a business is mobilize a team like a plague of influencers, okay? You need to seek support, build allies, sponsors, influencers, not just designers, but other people you work with that believe in the customer approach, okay? Now this is important. There's a couple of different tiers to this. It's not just about influencing others, okay? It's about influencing within your team. So if you're trying to mobilize a design team, it's important that you say, for example, you lead by example. So you can do good work in your team that your peers will respect and will want to do as well. They will copy that, okay? But the second, more important one is getting people who are not designers to preach on your behalf. I don't know if you work with people who are not designers, but they're really interested in what you do. They really care about what you do. They respect you for what you do. Those guys are your influencers, okay? And you have to build on them. So that's the third one. So let's just recap. So you've got to influence within your team. And I say by leading by example, that really depends on the culture of your company and also your leadership style, okay? I don't really tend to lead by example. I'd prefer to encourage others to do things. So the company culture and your leadership style will influence that. The second one, though, is influencing out with your team by getting others to believe in a customer-centric way of thinking. So far, we've got growing design within a business. So let's recap, okay? We've got opportunity. So think of the Barcelona example. Smell opportunity like a bag snatcher, right? It seems unfair to take advantage. I'm not saying be be nasty, okay? I'm sure we all design for good here. Might be some criminals in the room, but maybe the guys at the back. But guys at the back, no. But so smell opportunity and build on that opportunity. Rigor, argue your case like a lawyer. Being rigorous will give you more credibility. And the third one's influence, so you can use examples of the guys on social media. So not just about yourself influencing, but using the others around you, not just designers, but other people as well in your company that can influence design on your behalf. So if we go back to Jan, I did promise we would come back to Jan, didn't I? Remember, Jan's problem was he felt he had no voice or authority to make the company listen, okay? The other thing he had was that he didn't have enough time to sort of focus on the valuable design stuff. So how does Jan's life look after he's applied the principles of opportunity, rigor, and influence? Of course, Jan looks happy. That's Jan's happy face, by the way, just in case you're wondering. So I'm using McKinsey's 3 Horizons framework. So the 3 Horizons framework, helps us look at strategy ultimately, divided in sort of immediate, midterm, long-term. Okay, and we can use this framework here to see how Jan has applied these principles and how it's affected the growth of design within his business. Okay, so he's used rigor to establish credibility within his business. He's used his and his team's influence to get investment for team growth. And he's used his acute sense of opportunity to increase the design team's remit. Okay, now the time it takes Jan to do this, it depends on lots of other factors, all right? It could be a year, it could be longer, but you don't need that long, okay? The important thing is to have it as something that's formulated as a strategy. So we will have questions afterwards, all right? But if that's okay, we'll move on to the second part of the talk. Those of you, before I move on, those of you that put your hand up earlier and that identified with Jan, does anything that I've said so far resonate? Would it help? Some of the people who put their hand up earlier, just let me know. Does it make sense so far? Yeah? Yeah, kinda? Am I speaking too fast? No? Yeah, I got on with it. Okay, good. So second part, we're going to talk about how to grow business through design. Okay? So this is no longer about growing the design discipline, all right? So we've talked about growing design discipline within a business. We're not talking about that anymore. What we're talking about now is how we can use the design as a discipline, but using the design discipline in combination with other factors to help a business grow. So we're going to look at that from the designer's perspective. I'm not really interested in what somebody with a financial background can do to help a business grow, because that's not the subject matter here. It's also relevant and important, but I'm going to look at it from how we as designers can help companies grow through design. So I'll introduce Beata, okay? Is that a bad name to use? Surely not, come on. So there's not too many of these, okay? We've covered Jan. Beata's the one that we'll use to talk about how we make businesses grow through design. So Beata's a design manager in a financial organization. She's got a team of about 6 to 8 people. She's really experienced, okay? She's really experienced at what she does. She knows exactly what she's doing. However, she does find that she's put forward a few proposals in her company and they haven't been approved. She's just not getting the traction that she wants, okay? She does good design work, but she's proposed a few things that she wants to do in terms of like advancing the practice, improving the company. It's not working. She feels that the organization is missing opportunities because they're too far from their customers, okay? So competition is increasing and customers are becoming more demanding. And the guys at the top of the company aren't noticing. So she's got insights about customers and how customers are behaving, but she can't communicate that up the way, which is bad for the business. Okay, the business wants to get these insights, but she's not communicating them. But the third point kind of supports that, which is she struggles to explain things in a way that the business values or understands, okay? So when it comes to Beata, I'd like to just get a sense in the room For Jan, we had quite a few hands. For Beata, is there anybody in the room that identifies with Beata? Yeah, got 1, 2, 3. So there's a few, slightly less. I would say in terms of design maturity, this is a little bit sort of up the ladder, if that makes sense. So even though there's not loads of you in the crowd just now, looking at the way Poland's going in terms of design, I would expect, like if we did this talk next year, or even the year after, I would expect to probably have a higher proportion, okay? A lot of you guys are going to end up in design leadership positions pretty quick, I would imagine. So, has anybody else used Greta Thunberg in their slides so far? No? Really? Oh, brilliant. That was my main worry about today. I was like, somebody's definitely going to use Greta Thunberg. They're going to, yeah. No, so what do we think Beata, or indeed all of us, can learn from Greta Thunberg? I mean, 2019 was definitely Greta's year, right? She was nominated for Nobel Prize Peace, didn't get it, but she has also received a lot of criticism, okay? You've heard some really nasty comments. I mean, there's some pretty nasty memes out there, isn't there? I'm sure none of you have seen them, of course. But the other thing is you've got people like Aaron Banks, an EU donor, saying things like joking, but kind of saying it anyway, like she wishes that she would die in a freak yachting accident. Or you've got Donald Trump saying, oh, she's a happy little girl that's looking forward to a bright and wonderful future in a sarcastic fashion. It's not very nice. It's quite bullying. It's quite nasty, isn't it? Especially if you consider her age. So you're highlighting a couple of things there. Okay, and we'll touch on one of them later, which is change. People respond in a funny way to change, right? But you've also got another thing, which is power play. Now, what comes to mind then in terms of factors? Resilience, okay? This is the first aspect that I think is super important for trying to grow businesses through design, resilience, all right? The key thing to take away from this is don't be knocked off course, stay strong. Now, the thing is, we all think design is super cool and super valuable. And the guys in the audience that put your hands up when you said that you identify with Beata, you'll know this. Design is only cool and valuable in certain environments. In certain other environments, it counts for absolutely nothing, okay? And that's the difficult bit. That bridge, that gap between those two statements is the bit that we need to work with, all right? We ask questions, right? You know, sometimes when you ask questions, it makes people nervous, especially if they don't know the answers, right? And designers, we tend to ask lots and lots of questions. So this slide here is me, actually. This was a particular role that I had for about a year. You can read some of the comments on there. They're all real, all from the same job, okay? So it's pretty brutal. Yeah, you do end up in these situations where you have lots of factors against you. That's why resilience is important. Okay. I had one client once that said to me, you've got 1 minute to sell why we need to do customer research. 1 minute. It's like, that's quite hard to come up with that in 1 minute. Now, I had prepared because I knew they were going to ask me the question. And I gave them a pretty good answer, but they still said no. 6 months later, they fired me because I wasn't doing enough customer research. So it's like, you know, can you win? I don't know. It's hard. Sometimes it's hard. If you're working with the wrong people, you have to try and win them round. You have to try and convince them. You can't always do that, but you have to try. Funny thing was, they offered me my job back 1 month later because they realized I'd made a mistake. So basically what I'm saying is, as designers, we are change agents, okay? We ask lots of questions, and that makes people nervous because they don't know the answers. We have to learn to be strong and resilient. And I believe that the human-centric organizations of the future need resilient design leaders. So we've got resilience. Second factor, empathy. I'm going to go straight into this one, okay? Now, empathy, and I'll be rigorous here, okay? classified by the Oxford Dictionary as the ability to understand another person's feelings, experience, etc. Now, as designers, empathy is a big part of our job, isn't it? And if you think empathy was actually the big word in the design sort of circuit of maybe 2018, or if you lived in California, probably 2016, 2017. So it's kind of old hat as a design word, but empathy is still relevant. And the context I'm talking about here today is not about empathy with customers. Okay, of course you have to have empathy with customers. That's a given. The empathy aspect I want to talk about today is empathy for the people that we work with, our business colleagues. Let's have a look. What we've been talking about so far is about growing design as a discipline, okay? So imagine we've done that. But in the context of growing business, it's no longer about growing design, okay? It's about how design fits with other disciplines for growth. So we have to collaborate, be humble, have respect for other disciplines in the world of business. And we need all these disciplines to come together to achieve better outcomes for customers, okay? I'll have to thank Elon Musk and Tesla for this photograph. I'm sure they don't mind me using it in this presentation. The next and final factor we'll cover off today is about not stopping at the idea, all right? Designers, we've got lots of ideas, but what do we do with the idea? That's the important bit. What do we do next? Not just conceptually. I'm not talking about designing or prototyping something here. I'm talking about how much does it cost to build this thing, okay, that we're trying to design? How will our idea make money? What I'm talking about today for the third factor is accountability, okay? Now, this is the step change here, all right? Because this is about no longer looking at design work for its own value, but looking at design as the value of the design work you're doing as being aligned to the value of the business that you're working in, okay? So your performance measures for your design work is now aligned to the success measures of the company you're working for. It's accountability. And you have to know all these things. You have to know how much does it cost to operationalize? Has the business budgeted for such expenditure? Will this change the organization of the company? So there's an example from a business unit that I know that was a digital transformation. It was originally a telephony-operated service. So I'm sure you have them here too, where when you want to interact with the service, you have to phone up. That's your only way of interacting with the company. So this was a project, it was a big program of work, a 2-year program of work. It was a digital transformation of a telephony-based service into a digitally operated service. There was a nice vision, and there was a rough roadmap as well. Now, the interesting thing was the success measures, okay? If you have a look at the success measures I'm talking about here, they'd graded things. So if something was bronze, it was because it was managing to reduce 1 to 5 staff. If it was silver, it was reducing 6 to 20, and if it was gold, it was over 20. That's genuine, okay? That's from a genuine project. So what we're talking about here, when I say accountability, it's not always an easy thing. Basically, that's the brief. Oh yeah, go and do a digital transformation that reduces people's jobs. That's tough, right? Not only that, they would use this to prioritize features. So if you were thinking about which features to focus on, you'd have to gauge it against that and say, okay, well, this feature's not a priority because it's only going to cut 5 jobs, whereas that feature is a priority because it's going to cut 20. So it's pretty brutal. It's pretty brutal, yeah? That's the sort of step change there, okay? The closer you are to the business edge, the harder the decisions become, okay? Now, this is the price we have to pay if we want to place design at a decision-making level, particularly for the guys that are beatas in the audience, okay? If you want design to go up the ranks, you're going to encounter this kind of stuff. It's not just about design, it's about business. And sometimes it's tough, right? It's not nice stuff. So let's quickly recap. I'm getting the 10-minute mark there. Thank you. So we've got resilience, so staying strong through tough times. And this is really important. Businesses need resilient design leaders, okay? If you're a resilient design leader, you're fantastic because they'll believe in design. If they get design leaders that quit because it's not interesting, it's too hard, it's not what they thought it was going to be, that's actually bad for a discipline. So resilience. Empathy, not just empathizing with customers, which is obviously important and definitely part of our jobs, but empathizing with other disciplines within the business. So understanding how design as a discipline can work with other disciplines in the business, like operations, finance, marketing, for the greater good of the company. The third one is accountability, which is aligning one's objectives to the business objectives. So if you're being measured for success, you need to align the measures of success of your design project to the measures of success of the business. So remember Beata. So Beata, she'd had some design initiatives rejected. She felt the organization was missing opportunities, and she struggles to explain things in a way that the business understands. So how does her life look once she's applied the principles of resilience, empathy, and accountability? She looks happy. Come on. So again, I'm using McKinsey's 3 Horizons framework to illustrate business growth through design at Beata's company. Okay, she's become more resilient. She's taught the organization to become closer to its customers, and she's learned to appreciate her colleagues more for their own strengths and abilities. And now she frames all work that she does in the business context and tries to align the performance measure of her design initiatives to the success measures of the business. So let's just recap quickly, all right? We've got both sides of the coin there. I said I was going to focus on growing design within business on one side of the coin, which are the ones on the left, and growing businesses through design on the factors on the right. And I want you just, as we run through them, just think, what are the things you could do, okay? So I know it's been a long day, guys. You've been getting bombarded with information all day. So yeah, this is quite heavy. But anyway, opportunity. So if you're growing design in a business, think opportunity. Smell opportunity like a bag snatcher. Sense opportunity and build on that opportunity, okay? Rigor. Be more rigorous about how you reference your work and how you reference your decisions. It will give you more credibility. It will give you more power. Influence. Mobilize your team like a plague of influencers, okay? Not just your team, not just yourself, not just your design team, but also other professionals that you work with. Get them to influence on your behalf. If, however, on the other side of the coin, you're looking to grow the business that you work in through design, think about being resilient. Don't be knocked off course. It's a hard, hard path, so stay strong. Grow your empathy with other people that you work with, okay? These are your new allies. It's not about designers sticking together anymore. It's about forming allies from other areas of the business. Empathy. And the last one, which is accountable, making sure your measures of success are aligned to the business's measures of success. So they're all quite universal, okay? And I do believe design is super relevant for the businesses of the future. What I wanted to do today was talk about design growth in business, share some of my own thoughts, my own experience in that area, as well as some stories from others, okay? Now, we all want to see design grow. So I believe that with these principles, it's really going to help us. We've got a Q&A session afterwards with some questions. Hopefully, we're going to have a few people asking questions. That's all from me. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Rhys. Okay, so let's start with questions. Anyone has a question?
Thank you very much. That's been really good. I wonder what would you say could be the first kind of easy to implement practice on the way to establishing a more presence for the digital design team within a large organization? Like, imagine it's a new team that's only been, formed, and it's a large organization, and you really want it to shine, to show its potential. What would be the first practical thing a team manager could do there, or the team could do?
I think opportunity, smelling the opportunity and knowing where to put the effort. So if you look around, the most valuable pieces of work that your team can work on might not be the pieces of work that you're being asked to do. They might be things that you need to seek out. if you can identify areas of opportunity and areas that you can really bring value and manage to somehow, even if it's extra officially, to focus some attention to those and prove value quicker or to the right stakeholders, that's where I would start.
That's awesome. Thank you.
If anybody, can I just say, if anybody is shy to ask in English, I'm happy for people to reach out to me out with the session, but also I think Wojtek kindly offered to translate any questions. So.
Okay, so any other questions? Mogą być po polsku?
It's been a long day. They're all looking forward to the beers afterwards.
The beer is tomorrow.
Oh. One whole day. One whole day.
So maybe one more questions, anyone? Here we have.
So you mentioned building resilience, and I'm wondering how long can you be building it until you decide to move on and build it somewhere else, for example?
Very, 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 very good question. There's no, there's no silver bullet there. I get that one wrong all the time. I think you need to be realistic. I think that one of the difficulties we have as designers is if you're good at your job, I don't know what it's like in Poland, but in the UK, you get approached a lot for new jobs and you're constantly being tempted by new jobs. That's actually quite a difficult environment to work in and a difficult environment to be faithful or loyal, you know, especially if things are tough. Sometimes it can be useful to take a step back and think about, okay, if in 5 years' time, I look back on now and I have to tell the story about what I've done, which story would I prefer to tell? And that can help you understand, you know, how far you're willing to put the effort in or whether you just need to cut your losses and go somewhere else. Does that help?
Although, you know, change it all the time because in 5 years' time.
I wouldn't. If things are really bad where you're getting no traction at all and it's starting to affect you and affect others, that's probably a sign of a bigger cultural change that needs to happen. And it's probably not something that you can influence as a design team. So you might want to cut your losses on that case. But it's in those cases where you do have enough levers to pull, then you would choose to pull those levers. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Although I'm wondering if it's not cool to, you know, stay and then become the one who is finally managing to change your company, right?
I think it's good. I think more designers need to put in the commitment because if we're always changing, it doesn't give companies the longevity or the constants that they need.
Mm. Okay, it does help. Thank you very much.
Thanks. Anyone else?
Somebody there.
Yeah, I've got a question about your answer to a CEO or a stakeholder that asked you to convince him within 1 minute. What was your answer? You've said that you've got a good one, right?
I can't remember my specific answer. I'm trying to think of the context. It was to do with the research that they'd done being out of date. So they did lots of research 2 years previously as part of an incubation. Okay. And what they were doing at the specific time was so different to what they'd envisaged 2 years ago. I said to them, we need to benchmark. You know, I said, what we need to do here is benchmark where we're at now. Because where we're at now is a very, very different place to where we were 2 years ago. And it's foolish to build on those things for our future strategy. But unfortunately, they weren't willing to stop and spend. I put it in a really easy format for them as well. But again, that example is actually one where the cultural context I was talking about, okay. In some contexts, you're never going to win, you know? So you have to be able to identify. You have to try, but only to a certain point. And then you just have to let go, put your energy somewhere else that's going to make a difference.
Yeah, exactly. You need to let go some way, right?
Does that help? Does that kind of...
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, thanks.
Thanks for your question.
Okay, do we have any more questions?
Thanks. I was just wondering if and how do you take into account ethics when you do design work? Because you mentioned the example about laying off all these people and especially prioritizing tasks based on the amount of people that would be fired, basically. And then I also imagine that the end product wouldn't be that useful for the client because it wouldn't be based around the client's needs, even just on like this harsh metric.
Yeah, it's true. And I suppose I chose that example because it's real. I could have given you a sugar-coated version of that, but it doesn't kind of show the reality. I don't think working in that way is appropriate, to be honest. I think it's okay to have a sense of priorities and a sense of business drivers that matter. Like operational efficiency is a big driver for a lot of digital work. It's not just about winning new customers. It might be about reducing costs. And when you reduce costs, it's not an ethics thing. It's a reality. So the difficulty is, can you deal with that as a designer?
Okay. Anyone else? Great. So I think Rhys gonna stay there for a little while. So if you, is there anything else that you want to ask him? Just come here and ask after the official end. Huge thank you for Rhys.
Thank you.